Ever wondered about the safety of vaccines? Are you skeptical, perhaps even warned against it? Allow us to flip the narrative and guide you through the reassuring world of vaccination with our irresistible propaganda. Indulge in the ultimate fusion of safety and progress with our vaccine. Discover the thrill of making health decisions as sexy as they are responsible. Our sultry and secularly biased experts promise a journey filled with safety, fun, and social acceptance. Zero vaccine shaming here. Unleash your passion for protection and let the chemistry of care guide you to the perfect vaccine match. No side effects, no fuss, because in this intricate world, every illness you may have acquired is better explained by life's complexities than casting shadows on the wonder of vaccination. Don't miss out on the hottest decision you can make. Ask your doctor which vaccine is right for you.
Our vaccine nurses are not just adorable, they are highly trained professionals who are available to guide you through your immunization journey.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.
Synctank.
When am I gonna have my own? It fell down again. When am I gonna have my own reptilian, human, hybrid, alien babies? Brand
40,000. 40,000 subs. That happens.
Oh, okay.
You may have them already and not know it.
Yeah,
you know?
that's
They're here already. You know.
There's actually something crawling out of your ear right now.
I feel like that's true. Well, that's good. That's good. That's good. I mean, I have been noticing that that's a thing right now. People are talking about. And I wanted to pretend that it's topical because there is at least. I'll compensate with this like 3-day-old post. There's a few 3-day-old posts about like humans and tails and the evidence why humans would not have tails anymore. But at some point, we probably had tails. But then also this, kind of the monkey-in idea. So what's up with this DNA sequencing of reptiles reveal that we have shockingly similar DNA in the human sequences to reptiles instead of just monkeys, right? I mean, why don't they ever tell you that? Why don't they ever tell you that we have all these things in common with reptiles?
I realized that on ayahuasca, actually. The first time I took ayahuasca, it was like kind of at the forefront of my consciousness, like pretty much the whole time. It was like the Eden story, but then also just this idea that like long time ago, in a galaxy far away, dinosaurs roamed the earth here, and now they roam us.
Yeah,
like that's and that's always been kind of my takeaway from like the David Icke thing. Like my own interpretation is like what he kind of is what's being pointed at, whether he realizes it or not, is just the nature of the pineal gland in terms of like evolution. Because I don't like that just linear take on evolution that just like where you just look at this leads to this leads to this. Like it just seems like it's this kind of intelligent clusterfuck of just different like the dinosaurs were here, like they ruled the planet, and now we're here and they're like somewhere embedded in us, like we haven't nullified the reptilian in us all the way. Like that's like something that indicates evolution is this transmutation of the reptilian in us.
Who
that
is
old,
Big Monkey? Like, who's pushing this Big Monkey narrative?
Yeah, who's the big monkey thing? Yeah, I don't know. I just remember when I went to like it was Eureka or something, like one of those California gold rush trips. They had like a Native American. And I'm sure I'm stretching the term as much as he was. Like he's probably an American guy who's got a little Native American to him or something, but he dressed up like a Native American in front of all these fourth graders. Felt very South Park in retrospect. But he tells us all these stories that are supposed to be native cosmogony. One of them, how the human was created after all the other animals had been working together and hanging out. They all had to throw in a piece of themselves to make the human, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so the lizard throws in his own hand, right? Like some of the animals are throwing in like a little bit of fur or like a little like tiny bit of him, and everyone's like, oh man, the lizard's just standing there quietly not doing anything. And finally he just like takes his whole hand and throws it in, and everyone's like, all right, nice. So
that was do you remember Rodman? Rodman was a friend of ours. I don't know if you met him, the Aptos guy, but he was a great musician, and he had a sample, and I don't know where he got it, but it was like it was like a mad scientist, and he's like, we took the most evil traits of the most evil creatures we could find in the galaxy and put them into one creature, and it's like it turns out it's man. It's so good.
that's relatable. I don't know,
That
but
and,
yeah,
and the old school like Planet of the Apes quotes are pretty hardcore.
Totally.
true. Yeah, but it's kind of weird that we, I mean, I don't know. It seems like evolution as a theory is more misunderstood now than ever before. Like a lot of people think we just came from monkeys, and that's the theory of evolution. Even that's what they think other people believe. There's so many
technically
misconceptions.
it's apes and goats, not just monkeys.
Yeah, right. Yeah, goats. But I mean, this idea of a missing link, right? Like, is that really? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's more primitive. It just means
It's kind of weird the way they do that. They're looking for this smoking gun where we just find one example of it and then we have it, and it's like
I think I've got a spoiler alert. If it exists, we killed it. I'm pretty sure that's what we've specialized ourselves in doing, is finding anything remotely close to us and just wiping it off the face of the planet.
Yeah, so do you think it's possible? Like, so this is one of the things I kind of am hoping, that maybe the Bigfoot scenario speaks to a change in human civility, that we're no longer killing off all of our alternatives. Maybe now we have like a secret compound, like the militaries they like to study the Bigfoot, they like to drug the Bigfoot in the middle of the night and like check the Bigfoot's tummy with its finger, right? I'm sure we're doing more perverse things than killing Bigfoot to Bigfoot at this point, right? That's what I feel like. I feel like if Bigfoot was alive, they're keeping him isolated, and that's that's maybe like a rise in civility.
Do you guys know Loren Coleman? He's like I think he's actually considered the world's leading researcher of Bigfoot. Isn't that his name, Loren Coleman? Did I get that right? It's a man.
Loren Coleman. I spelled it wrong, but yeah, the masculine Loren. There he goes.
Yeah, cryptozoologist, and this guy's written a stack of books on Bigfoot. He's funny too. He's got a sense of humor, but he's also, in all seriousness, like he could tell you everything you'd ever want to know about Bigfoot. This guy actually named me Synchromistic of the Year, I think in 2017 or something like that. But yeah, super cool guy. Has a blog as well. It's worth looking at. But yeah, he's the go-to Bigfoot guy. We should have him on sometime.
There's enough room for there to be Bigfoot. I still push that narrative that there's enough room for there to have been not deceased, not completely extinct bipedal hominids. What do you think? I mean, like, we talk about Bigfoot so much, doesn't it kind of... The fact that other people talk about Bigfoot so much, does that mean that there probably is just I don't want to call it an undead Bigfoot, because that's a whole different show. But
I don't think talking it puts it into existence, but I think if you consider the biodiversity of like a tropical rainforest, for example, there's, countless numbers of types of animals, but there might just be like 70 of one, because it's biodiverse. It's not necessarily plentiful in each one of those things. And Bigfoot could very easily just be part of a biodiverse ecosystem without being like a huge part of it.
I feel like it would have to be a huge part of it, though, if it was this apex predator, like a natural man. And that's the other thing. It's like the dragon thing. We all know that everyone around the world talks about dragons. So there has to be something there that pushes towards dinosaurs. But now we know about giant birds and everything else. Like there's clearly, all of these stories have something in common. And then we look into genetics to find that birds and
You
birds
say
and
like
dinosaurs.
Apex, but what if he's a vegetarian? What if Bigfoot's a vegetarian? What if he
Yeah,
has
he
all
could.
of his teeth are all flat?
He could be the apex. He could be the apex and still be a vegetarian. I feel like gorillas kind of are a kind of example of that, right? Like it'd be kind of, so that's the other thing to say that gorillas are, how intelligent do we accept that gorillas are? So if you saw a bunch of gorillas in nature and you're like, wow, they're doing a bunch of really impressive things, they're communicating with themselves, they have like a community. Would that be enough to say, oh, this is kind of like a Bigfoot, like this is the Western equivalent of Bigfoot? Or is Bigfoot more, is Bigfoot like more? It seems like it's almost always Bigfoot's kind of human. It's
I
like
always
very
thought that it
much
was
our-
weird that like there was this incentive to make Koko into a Christian, because I don't know how much of that came from Koko's own heart, like, or just like,
I
because it's like
didn't read the Christian vibe. I read the
I've never
like,
heard this.
I read the New Age vibe because it was like you got Robin Williams his shirt off, and then they're asking Koko what she really thinks, and it's that God is a woman that was born from another god, another woman, right? That's like the isn't that
Yeah, I think it. Well, the thing is that Koko thought for himself and loved kittens. Was like this super sweet gorilla, and there was an incentive to like make
Koko was the chick,
Koko
guys.
Christian. But what Koko actually said in sign language was something else.
Yep, this is pretty fun when people. Just fun fact for anybody who doesn't know this about Koko the gorilla, female Western lowland gorilla. It's her son that I think we're thinking of, right? But Koko was born in San Francisco Zoo and lived most of her life at the Gorilla Foundation Preserve in Santa Cruz Mountains, bro. That's right.
What?
Koko is from the trees, bro.
There's actually a documentary on Koko that was directed, produced, whatever, by Barbet Schroeder. I think that's how you say his name. That he did the two early Pink Floyd films, More and The Valley. If you know the soundtrack Obscured by Clouds, it's meant to go with The Valley. So it's literally The Valley Obscured by Clouds. And if you play those soundtrack albums with those films, it's incredible. But yeah, it's actually it's the La Valley, or however you say that, it's French. And I believe that this movie is actually the inspiration for The Land Before Time, with the Great Valley and the whole thing where they're looking for the Great Valley, and they go, like, this is very relatable to the plot of this French film. With this guy connected with
Littlefoot. That's the Littlefoot one. Oh my god, that makes sense. Everything about Spielberg ripping off movies is true. All the time.
Right. So this movie, The Land Before Time, syncs incredibly well with a momentary lapse of reason. And I think that's kind of, I'm not sure, but I think that was kind of the inside thing there, was that they were actually making like a dinosaur version of this Pink Floyd film that is super obscure, no pun intended, obscured by clouds, but yeah.
When my grandfather wasn't wrong one. When my grandfather wasn't wearing his Masonic hat, which is most of the time, he's wearing this hat. This is this is the one he liked to wear the most.
Your grandfather? Your grandfather wore a Back to the Future-esque hat like that?
All the time. Yeah, starting in the South Pacific in World War II.
Was your grandfather a time traveler? Come on.
Come on. I mean, come on, right?
That would explain a lot.
This seems like the most logical thing. I remember Land Before Time being, it's a tearjerker when you're a little kid. But the idea that it started out as a much more serious French even art film that was turned into a juvenile work by Spielberg. That's everything. That's basically everything I've ever seen him do. So it's about the self-discovery through the New Guinea bush. So this is about New Guinea.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't seen this in years. I paired it a long time ago. It was hard for me to find a copy. Maybe it'd be easier now. But
the wife of the French consul in Melbourne joins a group of explorers in search of a mysterious hidden valley in the bush of New Guinea, where she hopes to find the feathers of an extremely rare exotic bird. Oh, this sounds perfect.
This didn't go very well for Michael Rockefeller. I think this was the plot of his life too.
I thought he was just looking, for a few good men. Wasn't that the whole thing? Like, he went and found like the only functional, anthropologically, this is like a famous place that he went to, to many laymen where the Rockefellers travel is a no man's land. But in anthropology class, they talk about how they have a homosexual society there that has a polyandrous relationship, and you have essentially a married husband, and you have a married wife there, because you have to have breeding and everything because it's the island. But they also have this weird, platonic thing, I guess, is almost literally platonic, but from the
Well, that platonic actually means that they were, 'cause
that's what I mean. I mean that
Yeah,
kind of
okay.
platonic, just so you're clear.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think you're talking about the Etoro people, which I always get confused with Atoro, which is a really nice type of sushi.
And also that there's
They both melt right in your mouth, though.
You could also follow John Rockefeller on eToro. If eToro's
that's crazy.
It's the marketplace social media. Yeah, that's not what I mean. I forget how you spell.
It's just eToro.
I've never even heard of eToro. What do you get?
Right there.
You've never been to the eToro website where you can. So eToro is like Facebook, Twitter, but what you do is you follow what people are investing in. So if I were to look up another Rockefeller with a more public page, I don't know if I could find one. You can go.
I know Open Secrets. I don't know eToro.
Basically, eToro tells you like, okay, these are the dudes on this site, and they all just put their money into gold or frankincense or myrrh or Bitcoin.
Can we find Pelosi on here? We can get rich tonight.
I don't think people. It's not all. It's these are public accounts of people all around the world that are traders. Like, so this is an open trading. Like, people get it. This is the alternative to Wall Street. It's people trading publicly online all over the world. And
this is how that 10-year-old beat everybody at chess when he went against all those chess masters. He just like copied their moves one by one and like memorized what the last one had done and came back around. Like, and then he never played again. You're like, how did this 10-year-old beat all these chess masters? Actually, there's a Darren Brown video where he shows how that was done. He doesn't connect it with the kid, but it's obvious that's how he did it. But if you just go from table to table, and so you could do that with Pelosi if you had what she was investing in. You're just like, oh, what does she do? You do just keep up with it.
Yeah. Well, I know she likes those $5,000 tubs of ice cream. I mean, I don't know if I can even look at this guy because he's wearing finger paint as clothing. But here is, the beginning of the trip, I guess, when he starts.
He does look tasty. If you had to be a cannibal, that looks like some prime beef.
Yeah. It's true. He's got like a Mia Farrow's bastard kind of vibe,
Is it more tender when you're that pale? I don't know. I don't know the cannibal.
Well, I think out of like in terms of cannibalism, he's the closest you can get to Kobe beef, I assume.
It's adorable. But yeah, I think the thing that bothered people was he went to that island. He was studying this culture. They have a non-monogamous, non-puritanical society. And for the most part, they're not hugely into cannibalism, but I guess that can happen, right? Like if usually it's if you eat an enemy or something like that. So if he had upset some people, and he disappeared, but no one's sure exactly of anything, right? It could very well have been that the elite had disappeared him or something like that. He had some dispute between the Rockefellers and somebody else.
Ooh, there's a sync in the comments. People say it's Nancy Pelosi's birthday today. Good fact check.
Happy birthday,
but they say, and she's from Baltimore.
Oh.
Ooh, good segue. I don't know how much we have to say about that. For me, it could go either way. I'm looking at that. I'm like, currents. They dropped the anchor, whatever. They fell back into the bridge. I'm not really sure. I didn't have the same visceral reaction as I did on 9/11, where I was immediately like, okay, no, give me a break. But yeah.
I know that
I prefer when Mothman takes down bridges.
The Baltimore, and I like it when Shazam and Spider-Man puts them back up. Baltimore bombing was a huge Netflix documentary recently, and I've always felt strange about this poor Georgian boy. Right, that all felt really weird. But what happened with the bridge in Baltimore?
Did you watch the footage?
No, I didn't.
Oh, really? Oh, yeah. So a large ship went past the bridge, and apparently its electricity was going on and off. And then it went backwards, and then the entire bridge falls. I didn't see that many cars. What if that? I was just thinking when I watched it, I was just like, you see the cars go by, and then you see it collapse. And I was like, what would it be like to be that car that just made it right before the bridge collapsed? I'm always nervous when I go across these bridges, anyway.
I have a secondhand story. Brittany's dad was in Minneapolis in 2003, I think it was. Minneapolis Bridge. What do you call it? What is it when a bridge breaks? collapses. Yeah, the Minneapolis bridge collapsed. Anyway, he was the last car on that bridge. He was driving on a truck, and all of a sudden he started feeling the bridge kind of shake, and he thought, oh, that does not, it's probably, I wonder what that is. Anyway, he just like zips across because he's got a good truck, and then as he turns around, it's all gone behind him. The whole bridge is like collapsed in. He's the last car that passed. And he's like, I don't know if I should should I talk about, I'm not trying to cause a problem, but like if someone wanted to like I should be on TV, like, yeah, I survived. I went to sell T-shirts. I survived, but
I stayed at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Yeah, I remember my sister in 1990 when people had the shirts that said like I survived the earthquake of 89 or whatever, and she's like, what about the people who didn't? And you wear that shirt around and they're just gonna make them. I'm like, yeah, Laura, hardly anybody died in that earthquake. The chances of you actually running into somebody who had family that died is, I remember slim.
I hadn't seen Titanic yet, and then I saw Titanic. It was like 1997. Like everyone was talking about it, and it was like second grade, so I was kind of young. I was like, okay, whatever, It's also, I go into this knowing that the Titanic is, what is it? The Titanic was a boat that sank. Okay, so then I get a T-shirt that says "The boat sank, get over it," and I wear it through the entire. And it's like, apparently, it's one of the first things that I could have gotten in trouble for in school. Like they called in, they talked to my parents, like, "Is this okay?" And then they said, "Yeah, it's fine." But I wasn't part of that conversation. But it already started to offend people because people were already like, "Well, these people died," but like, yeah. In 1917.
Well, they were mad because you were insulting Leonardo DiCaprio mostly.
Dude, Leonardo DiCaprio didn't die. In my version of reality, he's just he's really good at holding his breath, and he's freaking from Chippewa Falls. Have you ever been to like the cold in Minnesota? It outdoes it. I get the feeling he just thought that it was going to be a nice like couple days on a boat, and all of a sudden things got way too out of control, and this girl's like, "I'm going to be with you forever," and he's like, "Oh God, you should leave that guy."
He found the perfect out.
Yeah, it's like he needed an out. Like he wasn't planning. Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of what I vibe with.
We've talked about this before. I don't hold it against Kate Winslet's character until she's like an old woman and throws the jewel. I know that people go, "Oh, blood diamond." I'm like, you know what? Those people were dedicating their lives to finding this one fucking thing. She's got it in her pocket. She makes him sit through that fucking boring ass story for that whole time. Listen to this old lady tell this story about a young girl.
We took off all our clothes and we got down. Like, okay,
right. Grandma. So that's the time when they cut to the people like Bill Paxton and stuff, just like listening to her. It's like the only points where it's like interesting enough for them to be like, "Oh, well, we've sat here this whole time listening to you. Maybe we'll take this in." And then it's like, dude, the rest of the time they just must have been falling asleep. And then she takes the goddamn thing and throws it off the side of the boat, like by herself. I'm just like, oh,
disrespect,
horrible person. Yeah. Jesus
and then this
Christ.
picture, and then she's like lying in bed, remembering her life, right? But she's not remembering her like family or her grandkids or her husband or her life. She's remembering this boat ride she took when she was 17 with this guy she hasn't seen since she was 17. And it's like, that's the photo that like zooming in, like, okay, and then she went and she lived her dream. Like there's her in Santa Cruz at the boardwalk on a horse with the beach behind her. I don't know. The whole thing doesn't make you kind of like, it makes me, am I a distrusting
that's like such a real human story though. Like instead of talking about the husband and the kids, it's like, I got my back thrown out by a young poor kid when we were 17. It was the best thing ever.
Yeah, and that's the only thing. That's the only thing she remembers or cares about, and I think that says a lot about human nature. Like, so then it tells because this whole generation of people that are said, well, why would you want to be you don't want to be her husband in that character. You know what I mean? You should be Leonardo DiCaprio, or you should be one of these other you should be Magnum PI. You should be Indiana Jones. You should be someone who doesn't live for all the goals are shifted backwards and inverted.
Zizek makes a good point about Titanic, that what she's doing is essentially slumming it. And there's something kind of vampiric around like the class issue that's so highlighted throughout that movie, because it exists at the time, but then it's really expressed with the sinking of the ship when everyone's fighting to, save themselves, But oh, that's funny. But yeah, Zizek, he argues that if suppose they had survived and gone wherever they're going to go, and she leaves her life behind and what she's used to, which is basically lots of money and being well taken care of with the help and whatever, it probably wouldn't last very long. And she'd probably be become increasingly annoyed by his freedom mentality.
The dude spits on the floor.
you're gonna draw me like one of your French girls, Jack. It's like it's not gonna last. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, I just saw that you draw. That's your job. You draw women all the time. Yeah, there's no way. It's like it's clearly it's a great boat ride, and the fact that this dramatic, crash of the boat while they're 17, so it's like so dramatic. You know what I mean? And
What do you guys think about that other ship? What was it called? You know, the one that people argue was the
Lusitania or whatever.
No,
the Lusitania.
The one that there was two ships that looked extremely similar.
The
The Britannia, I think.
Yeah. What do you think? Are you guys familiar with that? What do you think about it?
So that it was the JP Morgan insurance scandal where he didn't insure the Britannic, and the Britannic had some issues. So, and he kind of like painted the Titanic or he took the Britannic, made it look like the Titanic, and then intentionally sunk it so that he could claim the insurance money that he didn't get the first time it got hit. So really it was just the Britannic that basically got hit twice.
Well, there's a bit of ship of Theseus here, because you're building ships, you take parts from ships and put them in other ships, you keep a ship going for 20 years, and so this theory holds water.
Well, and the the biggest one too is the clocks. Apparently, there's not a lot of record on what the clock looked like in the actual Titanic, and even in the movie, they based that like grand staircase and that big grandfather clock was all based on the Britannic's version of this. And I gotta ask, have you guys heard of the gold smelting theory on this?
What do you got?
Yeah,
that the whole reason, because the records show that the Titanic had an engine room that was on fire for like 3 days straight, literally, as they were like going into a port and picking people up, and they got on and they would go to the next port.
What, and they just didn't know?
They knew, but there was just one particular engine room that was just constantly on fire the entire time. And the theory was that they were smelting gold in the one particular room, and that's why they actually went through the Arctic waters, is to counteract sort of like the intense heat that they were using to smelt gold. And that car that Jack is like banging her in, like that's essentially made out of gold. And after they leave, they melt that car down. They take all the bed frames, they melt the bed frames down. Everything there was gold, so that they could create like basically the funding to create the Federal Reserve. And that the hull was weakened because of that engine room being on fire for smelting gold. And the little like cherry on top of this theory, which maybe be less plausible, is that they weren't like too full of themselves and thinking that this boat is too big to fail, so that they didn't skimp on the life rafts. What they did is they used the life rafts to basically ferry out all of the gold that they had smelted on board before it sank. And that's why they were short on the safety boats.
Oh, I never heard that part. I know that there's connected to this theory of the insurance thing and the other boat, etc., is that there was a Jesuit conspiracy against the Federal Reserve, and that on the Titanic there happened to be like some of the world's richest people that were also opposed to the establishment of the Federal Reserve, and and so you have this, the future of basically people literally essentially turning in their gold, trading their gold for paper.
It goes so much deeper than that too, though, man, because the main one of those was Jacob Astor. There was like 3 main dudes, but Jacob Astor was the main one. And not only was he opposed to the Federal Reserve, but he was the last remaining financial backer of Tesla. And Tesla had already ran afoul of JP Morgan and company, right? Because he found out that Tesla was taking his funds and trying to maybe use it for like some free energy thing, and that wasn't kosher. So they ended up giving it over, and his only backer was Astor. So when Astor's gone, Tesla's funding is all gone. So and there's a few other little notes of this too, because JP Morgan was a member of the Jekyll Island Hunt Club, along with like 2 or 3 other people that were also booked to go on that exact same excursion. And they all basically canceled their tickets around the same time that JP Morgan unexpectedly doesn't go, even though he had an entire like suite built custom made just for him for this voyage. He doesn't go. He also calls up Hershey of Hershey Chocolates, and he tells him not to go, along with like 2 other dudes. So
yeah, it's like Israelis on 9/11. You don't go to work that day.
Exactly, dude. Exactly.
Or Saudi Arabians, or just people with connections.
Just people. Right. Anyway, Violet Jessup.
What are you gonna do?
Do you know who Violet Jessup is? Right. So I always like this one. She survived. What was it? The 3 shipwrecks: the Titanic, the Britannic. I think the Britannic twice or something like that. So Irish Argentine ocean liner stewardess and nurse in the early 20th century, Jessup is well known for having survived the sinking of both the RMS Titanic in 1912, her sister ship, the HMHS Britannic, in 1916, as well as being on board the eldest of the 3 sister ships, the RMS Olympic, when it collided with the British warship HMS Hawke in 1911. So it goes Olympic 1911 Hawke crash, 1912 Titanic, Britannic 1916. She's getting around. She's on all of them. You know what I mean? There's something special about this lady.
You know what's also interesting is they always throw out the RMS, but I believe when it got purchased by JP Morgan, his was called the White Star Line, and there's all sorts of occult connotations to like the falling star, which is literally the Titanic.
Oh, dude, yeah. So there's a Wise Blood sync with the 1950s version of Titanic with Robert Wagner, which is really weird because it kind of does with that album pairing. It kind of like synchronizes with Natalie Wood, because there was the whole thing of like who framed Wabba Wagner, because he's but anyway, she keeps repeating this thing about stars in the album. There's very specific lyrical content when you're watching this movie, which you can this is incredible to watch, because you can see many places where James Cameron took directly from this movie for like how certain shots were done, like, and even the storyline, the nature of that, you have this drama, because there's a lot of different versions of like the Hollywood Titanic movies, not just Hollywood. Like there's a German silent film too of Titanic that's even earlier. But yeah,
there's the book that the Titanic event was based on too, Futility, right?
Right. So totally. So this specific version of Titanic seems to be the most that James Cameron took from. And so it's really it's a trip to watch, because this album is called Titanic Rising, and her explanation of it is the way that she was impacted in her youth by movies in general. Like there's a song about movies, and like being and the difference between film and a movie is something she talks about in her, like what the movie Titanic was for her growing up, with all the emotion provoked and everything. So you're listening to an album where she's like explicitly referencing the 90s Titanic, and to watch it with the 1950s Titanic is really beautiful. So yeah, I recommend that. It's in my highlights, and it's also on the website. But yeah.
I'm just looking at pictures of Who Framed Werner Herzog. I feel like that could be a really good movie. Alrighty, can you imagine it?
Are you just over there just producing AI art like on the fly right now?
When we find out who it is who is framing Werner Herzog, we will understand why we are Werner Herzog in the first place. It is like the skin that is worn of a rabbit. I'm sorry. It just feels like that could be. That's the movie for me.
Yeah, this has got to be all real time, because he's on the Bing.
Because then there'd be the scene in Who Framed Werner Herzog where they're in Argentina and he has to kill Klaus Kinski. I'm sorry. How about that? Werner Herzog wanted to kill Klaus Kinski. Isn't that kind of a big deal? Like, I always think about that day. Like, he took him out into the woods in Paraguay, and he's like, look, no one has to bring you home. Like,
isn't that kind of what happened with Dick Cheney? And then the other guy apologized to him about it. The guy apologized to Dick Cheney about him getting shot in the face. He's like, I'm sorry, Dick. I shouldn't have been in the way like that.
See, that's different, though, because I feel like that's the circumstance. Well, sort of. I feel like Klaus
wasn't buckshot.
Klaus Kinski like calmed down a bit because he didn't want to die. But I feel like Dick Cheney's friend, he apologized. I can't imagine Klaus Kinski ever apologizing. You know what I mean?
Well,
even on his deathbed.
I've actually heard a reasonable explanation on this one, and it's that Dick Cheney's friend did a pretty big faux pas, because when you're hunting, and you basically like you kind of have like your own little zones. You kind of have like lanes that aren't necessarily drawn out there, but if I'm over here and you're over there to my right, and a duck flies out and it's kind of like over me, it's in my lane, then you're not supposed to shoot at it, and I am, and vice versa. And I guess this dude kind of like popped into, like he wandered out of his lane. So that was the explanation that I've heard. I mean, it's still crazy that you get shot and then you apologize.
What were they? Were they hunting ducks or quail, or what was happening? It had to have been birds, because if that was a fucking buckshot, he'd be dead, right? I mean, probably.
Well, yeah, or birdshot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was supposed to be ducks. It might have been quail. Quail makes the most sense, actually. I don't know, but
still, that was my understanding, is that the apology was for the faux pas in gentleman, hunting arrangements, not necessarily like I apologize that you shot me and it made this thing. It was like my bad.
I figured there has to be some other explanation. I've just been repeating a liberal talking point or something that I've carried with me over the years. But yeah, no, that could be.
I mean, I think everyone was impressed with that. That was a very CNN day, Myth the Class 1 gifted membership. Let's do it real quick.
Oh, there's the lucky person out there that's gonna get that.
I love Japan. Have you seen In Zoe? So here's a new game.
Oh yeah, with Eric Stoltz? No,
that sounds even cooler than what I'm talking about.
Oh no, I'm thinking Killing Zoe. I'm sorry.
Oh, we should look at that too. In Zoe is this new Korean game that's kind of being featured, supposed to be like The Sims, but it's so much more interesting. You play as a god, and there are many gods, and you're the god of your city, and your boss is this cat. And so you create chaos, order, cycles, patterns, weather, all sorts of phenomenon in order to bring people together and away from each other, and try to keep people alive or living life. If you start to die, you can sometimes rewind it and stop it. But if you do it a few times, then it becomes rather inevitable that you're headed towards death. I mean, it just seems like a really interesting Korean take on simulation theory. And it's given the opportunity that these sims can be ported in ChatGPT. So all of a sudden you have characters that have needs, emotions, awareness, live in a space. This might be one of the steps towards giving AI a world to live in, so that it can interact with people and not just a shooting frenzy. But also it means that in the future, any game, you'll have just any simulation, you'll have living people going about their days who need to poop. They'll have to get jobs so they can use bathrooms. They'll need beds, so they'll have to find places to sleep and buy rentals or pay for rentals. I think that's kind of interesting. We're moving towards this amount of simulation. I mean, this is so close to that Star Trek thing, right? Where they're basically alive.
Interesting. Speaking of shooting a bunch of people, somebody here asked thoughts on Russia shooting start of Tenet. So yeah, it's pretty uncanny. It's either a sync or a psyop, right? We got to make a game show, sync or psyop.
That's what this is.
Or you could have a third option, that it's a coincidence, which is just a synchronicity is just a coincidence with meaning. So I don't know. Maybe there's no meaning. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? You see Tenet?
I don't remember. Oh yeah. So what's Tenet about though? It's about a guy.
About magic squares.
He's a hitman who lives in the building. What's the story?
I saw it when it came out, and it's got some crazy. It does that same thing that is it the same guy who did Interstellar and stuff, where it's got these levels to it. South Park made fun of it because they're just no, you just don't get it because it's so cool.
Oh, that's like Inception.
Yeah. Well, Inception, is that what I'm looking for? Yeah. I meant Inception, but isn't the same director who did Interstellar too? Right? And is it the same guy who did Tenet? I'd have to check. I don't know.
No, it was Nolan, right? And Tenet was interesting because that comes from the square of Saturn, I think, magic square of Saturn. That's where the word Tenet actually comes from, and that you can read it forward and backwards, and that's sort of the aesthetic and the theme that they're going for. Although I didn't see it the whole way through, but that you can watch the movie technically forwards, and you could watch it theoretically backwards,
right?
So the thing to follow it the same way.
Exactly. So I've been meaning to do this thing with this movie that guy. I saw this in the theater in San Francisco. Actually, that guy, John Fell Ryan, did The Shining forwards and backwards, and so he's one of the contributors of that movie documentary Room 237 from Rob Asher. Is that his name? But anyway, I wanted to do that with this, where it's like you watch it forwards and backwards at the same time, either one screen on top of the other, or just like with transparency. But yeah, it seems like if I was going to pick another movie to play around with that, other than say Eyes Wide Shut or something, I've considered that would be a really fun one to do that with.
Yeah, the video that you were pulling up too before, Andreas, that it reminded me because you were talking about the Korean video game and how like it might not just all be about shooting and maybe taking care of them. And this one legitimately like is weird. Like something weird happens in my brain because I feel bad for this thing. Like he starts taking this stick and like hitting it and it's like stumbling. And like I hate this guy. Like after I see him do it to this poor defenseless robot, even though I know this thing's gonna come and kill us one day.
I mean, yeah.
Why do you? I don't have the same thing. Like,
wait, can you get to the? If you go a little bit further, there's a specific scene when this thing's like trying to walk, and he just takes a yeah, this right here. Look at this.
Yeah.
I want to know the statistics on that of people who are really like emotionally affected by watching machines get quote unquote abused.
There's a very specific part though. He grabs like a stick and he's like, yeah, like this thing. He's like ripping it around by its like ear, and he like hits it. And, yeah, bro, right here, bam.
I feel like I'm watching a dude hit a girl right now.
This
really, you guys, man. I mean, I can relate on a lot of things with you guys, but I'm not. I don't understand that.
Look at that. See how it like tries to hide, like as he's hitting it. It's like
he's like hitting a 9-year-old girl with a stick in the woods. Is what's going on.
So if you said that, if that was Johnny Five, and you saw some dude just bashing Johnny Five, and he's like, no, please, no, Johnny Five want to be alive, and you would just be like, I have no response to this.
Yeah, dude, I'm pretty sure.
I'm just like, fuck him, dude. It's a robot. Even to say them, whatever. It's like,
I mean, if he gets really good at like repairing himself and he can repair his arm all the time, he likes to be a battle bot. Like that's his like, he's into that. Okay, but like you take a dude out into the middle of the woods and you start hitting him. It's kind of messed up. Especially it's like a machine because the machine's like, what am I here to do? Oh, you're gonna beat me up. Am I supposed to withstand this? Is this the game? And then you're just destroying me. Okay. And I can't function? That's the game? Okay. Yeah, I don't see that as nice.
Yeah, like no, I don't see that. I don't have the emotional connection to that at all.
I don't know if it's emotional. It's just like
okay. So it's not emotional. Let's get start on how we may have. I need to understand you guys because like
where there is a human with superior power and intellect and everything that is literally just on this like defenseless. And I know it's not a creature and it has no soul and it has no life. But it's still beating it. And the fact that it's like trying to recover and it even looks like it like almost tries to hide behind it. I know it doesn't really do that. It was just like there was a tree there.
Okay. But so you didn't shed a tear in Office Space when they smashed the fax machine?
No, it's a little bit different because this thing is already anthropomorphized, but it's the same exact concept of like why do people
actually
take care
the
of
fax machine is kind of like if you had a friend who somebody had put like they got hit by a car and they're in a vegetative state and so they're keeping them alive and you want to free their soul from the inanimate body. This
is the mercy killing.
That's what the Office killing is. But then there's also the movie Harikari. Have you seen Harikari? It's like seppuku. I don't know how far I have to go into it. Oh, this is like a newer. Oh, it's colorized now. I've never seen this in color. Is this like a new version of it? Basically,
is this from the guy who did Sun and Steel?
There's like a 1950s Harikari. This is it right here. Basically, I can't even show the whole movie on YouTube anymore, but it used to be. I remember seeing this like on YouTube. But the story goes that a man comes to this gangster clan. And he asks for a place to perform seppuku, right? Because he's going to do a ritual suicide. And he's been living in the woods, and his life is really hard. And there's an honor thing here where you give someone the last meal and you help them. Now, if someone comes and they're just trying to take advantage of you and they're not really going to perform seppuku, then you've got someone who's like begging and saying they're going to kill themselves. Like it's the opposite, right? Like that's the worst possible thing. Someone who's like suicidal for love or something like that. So they make sure that that's not the circumstance. But this dude's not coming there not to die. He's definitely come there to die. And it's because his family have died and it's because his wife was abandoned by the husband, and the baby her died, and the husband was abandoned because he had to sell his swords, and then he went to try to go ask for mercy from the clan, and the clan made him perform seppuku. So he had to kill himself, but he didn't have his sword, so he had to use like bamboo to like
Oh my
slice
God.
open his intestines.
How can you can't do the full thing with bamboo the way you're supposed to do it, can you? I mean, you got to lift it up afterwards.
You can't cut off your own head, but he could jam it into his chest because he's like that disciplined of a guy. And for his wife and kids and on the honor of his family, he forces himself to do that. But that's why this dude comes there all upset, and he's like, "I have to kill you all and then kill myself." Essentially, you know.
Is
to, like,
this the same guy who did Sun and Steel? Because he did plays, and then they made a movie out of one of them, and I think it has Rob Schneider in it. Schneider? Not Rob Schneider. Rob the other one. The one from Jaws.
Not Sons of Steel.
No, Sun, S-U-N, Sun and Steel.
Sun and Steel. Oh, the guy who killed himself in the 60s. No, I don't think that they're related, but kind of in the sense that when he was talking about it in the 60s, it was a popular idea. I think the Hardcore movie came out in 1962, about 8 years before he killed himself. So there's already kind of a zeitgeist in Japan about Japanese culture, Japanese traditions. How far should we go to become Japanese again? You know, because a lot of people are saying there's something missing in Japan in the post-war time. It's very American. It looks like Chicago. There's neon signs everywhere. And people are starting to say, what do we have to do to return to Japan? This begins in the 60s. Everyone's like, well, what do we do to be Japanese? Like, what was that? And they start trying to design, you know, and demand that certain places remain culturally Japanese to the point of looking like Disney towns, right? They have rules in certain parts of Japan now. As of last Christmas, you can't, if you're a tourist, can't even walk in certain neighborhoods anymore because it's like you can't take photos there. It all has to be wooden. The Starbucks has to look like a Japanese building. Everyone has to wear clothing from the 17th century. And they don't want Europeans to even be there anymore. So they're getting to a really interesting point of cultural preservation.
Oh my God. Dude, so there's like, this is a little sensitive, but it's a sync and it feels worth mentioning. I've never talked about it online before, but I went to a sync summit in Olympia, and I think my friend would be okay with me talking about this. So one morning we're all hanging out, we're drinking coffee. The contributors, I think Alan Green was there and different folks, and all of a sudden a friend of mine she's looking at her phone and she just bursts out crying. And so like her very close friend, partner essentially, had committed ritual suicide and sent her his manifesto basically before he had done it. And we sat around and we read in sections the entirety of what he had written. It's actually on the Sync Book website somewhere. I don't remember exactly where it is, but we put it up for people to read. But this guy's trip. But it really reminded me of Sun and Steel. And what's crazy is that I had a copy of Sun and Steel with me. It was the only book that I brought with me to Olympia to read on the plane. And so I was like going up there reading a book about ritual suicide, and then my dear friend committed ritual suicide, and we read his explanation of it, which was so resonant with this book that I was reading at that moment. So really, really, really heavy and trippy. But my friend really was able to be present for that event, and I felt like it was just where she needed to be. In that circumstance, was to be surrounded by people that cared about her, and like it was kind of, as fucked up as it was also kind of perfect in a synchronistic way. And I mean, it was a sync event too, so really, really, really something.
I also wonder about what the Japanese think about, because they're always thinking about AI and robots and replacing their bodies, Ghost in the Shell thing. And there's a long belief in reincarnation, which probably I think plays into the high suicide rate of Japan, but I don't know. I mean, I'm wondering though, what do they think about the immortality of machines and things like that, right? Like,
do you remember that movie Gung Ho with Michael Keaton?
Oh yeah, of course.
The Japanese company comes and takes over like an American car plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good movie. And
Oh,
I like the main Japanese guy in that movie. He's also in like the Weird Al movie where he's got the wheel of fish or whatever. That guy was great in the 80s, man.
I was thinking of this because it kind of is the same thing, but just inverted a little bit. Where now it's like Japanese know that they have to adapt to American culture, but they also are struggling with like not letting go of some of like very traditional values in the process of it. And Michael Keaton's like the only one in between, these Japanese dudes and sanity.
He's like, look, we don't care about our values. Why do you care so much about your values? They just be valueless, Yeah.
Right. Well, and what's interesting too is like if you watch that movie now, as distinct from if you had watched it at the time, like because that was a hot topic at the time to discuss all the different dynamics of us with
this is like 85 or 86, so it's like right on the tail end of like Detroit no longer being the Motor City.
Right. So with hindsight, when you watch Gung Ho, it's another level of reflection than you would have had you watched that when it came out. Obviously, more than most movies in that way.
So hear me out. What if Mary really was a virgin? She's just a lizard person. Because you look at all these animal virgin births that are happening. Apparently, it's a common enough thing, not just stingrays, but certain kinds of lizards and situations. Whiptail lizard, extra chromosome to help them reproduce asexually if necessary. I mean, there's a lot. And then there's all these stories of people. Everyone's like, oh, wow, Jesus isn't the first virgin birth. Look at this one. Look at that one. Well, here's one about the gull. I was going to read goat and go so Bach saga on that for a second. But here's the deal. If nature's producing virgin births all the time, so why aren't we worshiping the dragonfly Christ? Because that sounds cool. And then also, why is it that unbelievable that there would be some sort of a human phenomenon of virgin birth similar? And then also, are there just that many different kinds of humans? Like we're talking about a human that has an achromosomal sequence or something like that. Lizard Christ.
Yeah. Have you guys ever seen a movie called Electric Babies? It's a little obscure.
Sounds
but
good.
it's the premise is it's a spoiler alert. I'm sorry, I got to do it. It's not the end of the movie. I won't tell you that. But where this girl is in a religious community, I believe she's
Electric State, Electric Babies. I can't even find it.
Electric Babies. I think it was called. Isn't that what it's called? Is that not coming up? I swear it was called Electric Baby or Electric Baby, something like that.
Electric Children.
Electric Children. I don't know, but it's this. Yeah, there it is. That's it. Electric Children. Thank you. Yeah. So she's like she's. Yeah, there you go. So you can see right here the plot. So the premise is that she gets impregnated by a cassette tape.
Nice.
And they don't know what to do with her and they freak out. And so she basically gets excommunicated and goes to the city and she goes on this whole trip. And so the tape, the cassette tape is the music of her father who she hasn't met because the mom took her away to this community when she was born, And so, yeah, it is a pretty good movie. But the point being is that what do you do when if somebody makes the claim that they're pregnant and they didn't have sex and she's in a religious community because they seem to be open to the idea, but that can only happen once. You couldn't be that special, So it's an interesting cause for reflection there.
I love the idea of the cassette tape being the culprit, like the word of God or the word of the Father or something like that.
Right. It's like kind of the idea is that her father just oozed sex, and that was like a tape that her mother had, and so it was all charged, with the sex,
It's like when you sit on a toilet after someone was just on it.
Right, like look how they write electric like with a K, so it's like magic with a K, right? So it's like kind of like recalls like the Moonchild type of thing.
I saw as elect Rick.
Yeah, get Rick elected. It's Rick.
Or get Rick elected.
It's definitely Rick. But no, but also the some of that cassette tape, the kind of like the monolith, but the two pillars, like the two discs, like the. It's crazy. I'll have to watch this movie now. That seems like.
Are we gonna have like a movie book club kind of thing where like in the course of a week we like watch a movie? You can do it with my sync films, but that would be a lot to ask. And honestly, like that would be ideal for me rather than just like a plug at the end of the movie. Like in the course of a week or 2 weeks or something, if you guys watch a sync film, we could actually discuss it. But because I really liked what we did with The Swimmer, I thought that was really fun. It felt like a movie book club or something. It was like, and like I didn't watch it at the same guy's same time you guys did. Like I watched it years ago, but I remember it well enough to have that conversation. I like doing that.
I've been watching Shogun. I don't know if you've been watching that show, but it's kind of interesting about like Christian Protestant invading, or he arrives in Catholic Japan right before the the Edo period where they kick out all the Catholics. So something's gonna happen. It's kind of cool because the dude's like, I don't trust any of these other Europeans besides myself because all of these are Portuguese Europeans and they're papists. And so the Japanese are like, oh, you guys don't trust amongst each other, huh? And like it's a pretty good show. I like that one so far. It's been pretty good. Plus the whole moon thing, crescent moon. You start seeing kind of the Arabic culture, the women wearing hijabs and things like that. It's pretty good. There was YouTube is going deepfake. They're gonna start like censoring and monitoring and pointing out that something's a deepfake now. Like this YouTube videos that look too real, they're gonna start telling you, "Oh, these are fake." What do you think about that?
Well, I think you're supposed to self-identify them, and I wonder what's going to happen now if you don't identify it enough or the right way, or if you're not specific enough, or does it include music, voiceover? Like, am I going to have a little asterisk? This is not actually, Michael Jackson narrating about a movie that happened in 2024. Like, are you going to have to go over and above for things that should be obvious?
What are you gonna do, Thomas, when a video comes out of you molesting a chicken that you have no memory of, and it's really convincing? And are you gonna want there to be something on that video that lets people know that this is not me molesting a chicken?
Yeah, I don't want to give it away, but I'll give part of it away. That there's a signature way that you would fuck a chicken, and it's that you would put each of its legs into a belt loop, and if the person doing that isn't doing my signature chicken fucking move, then it's not me. It's definitely AI.
Oh, like I can't use your Unreal Engine 5.4 has really amazing new rigging cloning tricks, so I can make anybody do anything that anyone else has ever done.
But you wouldn't know about the belt loop thing unless I told you about it.
But you just did. Everybody. All right.
Shit.
But all characters of the events of the show, even those based on real people, are entirely fictional. All celebrity voices are impersonated poorly. The following program contains coarse language, and due to its content, it should not be viewed by anyone. This, over the years, has become more and more obviously one of the most brilliant lawyer tricks ever, right? Mm-hmm. This is one of the strongest. I think it's important. I think people should have these things. There's nothing wrong with you saying like, yeah, my video does not contain actual Michael Jackson. This video is 100% human free. I think that's probably a good thing. And we are getting to a point where most laymen are saying, hey, I just saw this whale coming out of the sinkhole in Atlanta City on YouTube, right? People constantly believe these weird fake videos all the time. I mean, you got people that believe that Kate Middleton has cancer. You know what I mean? Like, there's just crazy things that people
right. But you know what? There's a problem there, because I see on one side, I see people arguing it's fucking turbo cancer. She took the vaccine. This is what happens. And then I have people on the other side saying it's AI. And sometimes I see crossover where the same person who said that, and I'm like, does she have cancer and it's AI? I mean, I'm open to anything. I don't know. I do think it's interesting. Of all the things, the ring doesn't mean that much to me because her hand's in movement. Oh, the ring disappeared. Oh, well, you know what? Things could go like that's not enough. But what is something for me is I'm looking at that bench. I'm like, that is a wooden bench. It's not a metal bench. Why the fuck are the stripes in her outfit like in what appears to be like the shadow of the bench? Like, why does the shadow have stripes?
Why is she wearing the same striped shirt she wore 9 years ago? What kind of royal wears the same shirt twice, let alone has the same outfit 9 years later?
That is interesting, but it's
possible.
Not enough.
Maybe
it's not
really
that alone isn't enough for me. She could be wearing the same clothes again. But look at the background of that, and then look at the background of the video where she's sitting on the bench, right? It's like when you're doing a deep fake, that's really helpful to have a bit of footage that's just so similar.
Oh,
and then there's no one else there with her. Why isn't Harry there or whatever? I
really wanted to boomer post about this because like this one's funny when someone's like, look, these bars that are closer to you are prospectively larger than these smaller bars, so therefore this is it's not a fake bench. That's pretty reasonable.
Oh, wait a
If
minute.
you were
No, that bench does have a bit of a shine to it. So maybe I stand reflected. No pun
The
intended.
perspective is a little bit weird here. It reminds me of that shot where someone took a picture of Jimmy Carter and his wife, and they look like midgets.
It looks
Right,
like,
right,
this is the
right.
thing I'm starting to notice with like Unreal Engine stuff is that you can very easily make anything look real, and with a little bit of AI, you can pick something that was real so that for the most part it is real. It's just been slightly affected in certain places, but you can't even tell because it's using really natural lighting techniques. I mean, this bench doesn't look real because it looks too real in a sense. It feels like it's a simulation of
The
reality.
thing is that if they really wanted to ease people's concern, this prepared video isn't the ideal. Like if that's really what they wanted to do, and there was nothing to hide there, would we be watching her still on a bench like this? Like I don't. That's to me like it adds to the suspicious nature of it. You know.
Plus
Is
the
it just
stripes,
like-
man. The stripes, vertical versus horizontal stripes. I mean, she's supposed to be some sort of, Martha Stewart of England. She's supposed to know. You don't do that, right? There's something weird about that.
No, I don't know, man. I'm gonna lean in the direction that you're looking at a deep fake with that video. I think
So
that
But people will say like you're a bad person because you're questioning whether or not this person has cancer, which is like really funny to me that they're using whether or not she has. Well, but it's cancer, so now it's like playing poker. And you're like, well, now I'm raising you cancer. And
okay, so somebody says, "Who cares? Let's let it go, guys!" With a lot of exclamation points in the comments. I think this is one time where I'm gonna.
All right.
I think we should listen to them.
Well, I have a final note on this one, and it's not about the royals, but it's about if she's got cancer and if Charles has got cancer. Is this either proof that the elite don't have the cure, or are they like throwing us off the scent by like throwing some sacrificial lambs out there that they don't care about, just so that they might figure out that we've got the cure for cancer? Quick, kill off 2 high profiles.
Well, dude, she's blue blood. She's not blue blood. They're blue blood. So her red blood is. What's that?
Charles is though, right? Doesn't he also
right?
have cancer?
But Kate Middleton is like Diana in that way, isn't she?
Well, Diana was somewhat royal, but but Kate Middleton's more royal than Diana was even. So Kate Middleton is what was her deal? She has upper middle class family, but her I forget. She definitely comes from no, maybe not. I'm pretty sure she has like some royal in her. It's just that it's like dissipated. But
she does now.
Yeah, right.
Haha.
I don't know.
You are correct, sir.
I'll look it up at
I
some
want to
point.
do Ed McMahon's reaction to that.
How do you be British and not have some amount of royal blood at some point? It's a small island. I'm not convinced. What's the Mighty Boosh guy's got a new show too?
Oh, really? Which one?
Yeah, the witch guy.
The one who had the jacket recreated from Lucifer Rising.
What's his name? Is it David? Vince Noir? Is that right?
Mm-mm.
Noel Fielding.
Noel Fielding, yeah, he's funny, dude.
He has a new show right now that's come out. What's it called? Noel Fielding new show. It's like about 16th century. Yeah, there it is. The Adventures of Dick Turpin.
Yeah, I'll pretty much watch anything that guy does.
Yeah, so Dick Turpin is supposed to be like 1600s, and they're like lords that are causing trouble. This looks like it's actually going to be pretty good. I guess it's based on like an older show that was like a British comedy in the 70s. Gunpowder plot, all these kind of like 16th, 17th century conspiracies that they're going to cover. Looks like it's going to be pretty cool.
I got to mention something that's not going to be very good, but the premise of it alone is at least worth a mention. That I haven't seen it yet, but there's a movie that came out this year called Murderitaville, and it's about a bunch of like Jimmy Buffett fans that go to an island, but they start getting attacked by a half man, half bird monstrosity serial killer.
Oh dear.
Oh wow.
It's called Murderitaville. Yeah.
I like walk around, like I'd be like on Maui or something, and I'm looking at all these restaurants and I'm just like, dude, how does this guy perform at so many places, like even at the same time? Like
This does
and
look
then I
pretty
realized,
good.
no, it's a buffet. Shit.
This does look really good though. Actually, this looks kind of creepy.
Well, and there was a movie by the ones that did Super Troopers where it's a similar plot line where they go on like a secluded island that's run by like a Jimmy Buffett style like cult leader guy, and there's a serial killer on the island. It's legitimately I thought it was a really good movie. I can't remember the hell what it was called though.
That does sound
Hamburger in Paradise. Is that what
Did
it's
you
called?
watch Quiet on the Set? With
Club Dread. That's what it was called. Club Dread.
Oh, I
that's
remember
right.
that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
remember that. Yeah, okay, that's
That was
fair.
pretty bad.
That's pretty horrible.
You didn't like that? Oh, see, I've got the worst taste in movies though.
Everything these guys do is terrible, but that's kind of their
No, there's
vibe.
this so bad it's good kind of thing, and this may have been one of those, I guess. But
I mean, yeah, I guess I could see that being a thing. I want to do. I miss like Scary Movie and like those parody films, and I feel like this is kind of on that vibe. Like we want to make a movie like those other people, but they don't know how. And this is even better because like Scary Movie works, this doesn't, but that's kind of nice. Did you watch Quiet on the Set about Nickelodeon and?
Oh, I did, and I do have a controversial take on this one actually.
Ooh,
yeah.
let's hear it.
I'm sure we have the same take actually. Just looking at.
Well, I think this whole series was made to whitewash Dan Schneider, just to show and be like, hey, look, we've got all this real dirt on all these other people. We're going to touch on all the rumors that everyone has already heard a million times before just to acknowledge them publicly, but nothing new. There's absolutely nothing new coming to the table other than anything this guy did was done in front of 200 people. It was done in front of editors. And the jokes that he told.
There's no talking with Amanda Bynes. There's no information about Amanda Bynes. Like, and yeah, Amanda Bynes went crazy, and they just kind of walk away from that. They don't even pull up the info we have on that, which is like Amanda Bynes said that she was addicted to crushing Adderall pills. So she was going. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why she was already going crazy. They could have added, but they leave it on such a note where you're like, okay, well. The one thing that we have that matters is that Drake, after he was raped, said that this Dan Schneider guy was a good friend of his who offered to help. And so it leaves you thinking, okay, well, maybe this whole thing is that around Dan Schneider is way worse.
Dan's the good guy.
Well, no, which is actually, like, to be fair, compelling because you're like, look, actually, this is worse. If you're saying that Nickelodeon was just some like money making people on the East Coast and they hired Dan Schneider and Dan Schneider was a pedophile, that's less than saying actually Dan Schneider was the good guy and everyone around him was way worse. Everyone around him was terrifying. The guy who I don't know, David, you haven't seen it, right?
I haven't seen it, but I'm familiar enough with the stuff around Nickelodeon in the first place.
A minor spoiler, which is that the guy who has a relationship that turns into statutory rape of the Drake guy, he ends up, getting arrested for a very short period of time with all of Hollywood behind his back. He ends up getting out of jail within like 8 to 12 months, good behavior, and ends up working for the Disney Channel right afterwards. And they're kind of pushing the narrative like, really, that we should have more rules in Hollywood to safeguard against sex offenders working again with children. Like that's kind of the only resolve of the documentary. But really,
Powder all over again, right? Because Disney came under fire for the exact same thing because of the director of Powder.
But Powder is such a great movie, they kind of forgive it. I'm sorry.
Wait. You did what? Hold on. Let's read the script first before everyone comes to any conclusions.
Yeah, I mean, literally, there's a scene where Powder, River Phoenix touches Jeff Goldblum, and Jeff Goldblum has like a sexual reawakening, and the rest of the movie is just Jeff Goldblum wanting to be touched by this boy. I get that Powder is a lot.
Hey, you know what I will say to what you're saying, Thomas, is that it really is not difficult, and we have records of instances where when you're looking at the credits of a film, you're not actually looking at who the producers were or the directors in certain cases. And they've literally people have gone years with using aliases when they were blacklisted by Hollywood to still do screenplays. And if you watch Trumbo, that's what that recounts is like. And he wasn't the only one. There was a bunch of people who were doing that. And so with this, if you were saying, well, if there's an incentive that people wanted this out as a kind of propaganda piece, anybody could put up the money and not have their name included. Like there's no reason why that has to be in the credits. So I wonder sometimes with certain films when I see that there could be somebody that's benefiting from this, that they could be producing it,
Have you ever heard the theory that Mel Gibson sometimes uses Darren Aronofsky's name to put movies out?
I haven't heard that, but it's not I don't believe it.
I just made it up, but it sounds believable.
It's almost, if I wasn't such a big Darren Aronofsky aficionado, I'd probably go for it more. But
I'm trying so hard to open this picture, but I think I just where did it go? Hold on. Okay, well, one thing someone showed earlier is Nickelodeon means I will own nothing. You saw that one, right? I know.
Yeah, it has to be do. You can't have the n at the end, and otherwise the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, I lost it. Doesn't matter.
Wait, and also I don't know if we talked about it on here, but that the original Nickelodeons were kind of peep shows. They were sort of like
yeah.
for adults. You would go in there, you'd see a naked lady dancing for 15 seconds, and go on your way.
Well, Brian Peck, who is the dude from the Disney show, whatever. Apparently, one of the Nickelodeon kids from all that, like he was saying, yeah, they used to bring us over to his house. We had parties at his house. His house was really weird. It was like, and he kind of describes it like that movie Parents, with the kid whose parents are cannibals, and he's a vegetarian.
They literally said that?
No,
Randy
but
Quaid, right?
the way he described it was that atmosphere, like this kind of 1950s strange colors and interesting stuff. And he had turned his entire garage into a Land Before Planet of the Apes and 2001: A Space Odyssey with a monolith, like room, like a shrine. The whole, it's like being on a set of 2001: A Space Odyssey to go into his
and
car.
Planet of the Apes at the same time.
Yeah.
Which came out the same year and had the same lake in them. So the final sequence of 2001 has the same lake as they land in at the beginning, and they're both like doing the same thing. Like,
but
one
there was
ends
something,
with how the other one begins.
But there's something weirder in that room. He had a big picture, a hand-painted painting, and that doesn't fit the decor at all, according to, again, kid. The painting was of a clown, and he's like, "Oh, that's a weird painting of a clown." And all of a sudden, the guy gets right next to him, like, "Oh, you like that? Do you like that picture of a clown? That's an amazing thing that you noticed. I love that painting. That's a painting I got from my friend Ted Bundy." Then he pulls out a bag full of correspondence, and he shows this boy his personal letters back and forth with Ted Bundy, and how he's
wasn't it John Wayne Gacy?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right.
I was going to say. I'm like
sorry.
visualizing even they made a movie out of it, and he's the clown cut.
It's far better of a sync that it's correctly John Wayne Gacy. I apologize. Yes, John Wayne Gacy. So he's friends with John Wayne Gacy, and he's getting letters sent back and forth from John Wayne Gacy, and he has a picture of a clown drawn in prison by John Wayne Gacy in his room. And this is all years before anybody knows anything about how Brian Peck is a pedophile, or that he, is all these problems. I mean, he's gotten away with all of this for years, and at that point, they know him as Brian Peck Pickle Boy, because he would be just this weird character on the show who walks around with a giant crate of pickles and make people grab a pickle and eat a pickle. And there's like episodes where they would lock Ray Romano in the closet, and then he'd put the pickle through the hole in the door because there's no door handle, like a little glory hole for the pickle, and then Ray Romano just eats that pickle and just like, it's so good. It's just very strange.
It sounds like an inside joke kind of thing that we're not supposed to be privy to.
Yeah, that ends up being kind of the point of the documentary, is that, like, maybe if anything that Schneider did that was wrong is he's got like squirting on the face of Jamie Spears, like a cum shot facial kind of scene.
Are you saying that the gack in the first place was just kind of splooge-esque?
Well, that's what I find. I feel like they didn't say that, and they should have. They're like, well, the point of Nickelodeon is already that.
There was one guy in there in particular that was like, they put me in a leotard, and it's because they wanted to look at my dick. And then they had, and there was this one really weird part, and they call him like Nose Man, I think. This was after I stopped watching all that, but he's got like these big noses on his shoulders, and he's got a big nose on his face, and they're like, the noses are dicks. Like, that's the whole thing. And the whole time I'm thinking, like, did they really take a black kid and call him like Big Nose Man and like gave him like an accentuated like big black nose on his face? And no one's talking about that angle. They're talking about that the noses were dicks. It was surreal to hear that. And the whole concept of like, yeah, basically anytime someone got slimed, that was supposed to be Dan Schneider like coming on them or something.
Yeah, and I feel like there's definitely, there's some truth to the documentary that Dan Schneider wasn't the worst person there. And I find that really interesting that they're kind of saying that. Like, why are they going after everybody else? Isn't he supposed to be their fall guy? They've already kind of fired him,
Well, that's the function of scapegoatism in part, is to work as kind of a protective sheath for scapegoatism as it exists today, like traditionally anthropologically. But now you have the entertainment industry as kind of a protective shell for people who actually determine policy in your own life and really affect your life. Whereas these entertainers, we can throw shit at them and go crazy, and if there's justice there, we feel like, oh, something's being done or whatever. But meanwhile, people who actually, you know, affect you, they can continue to go about their business. So I kind of feel that that's one of the functions of the entertainment industry in general, is just for protection, you know.
What about Amanda Bynes? I mean, they didn't really talk about her nearly enough, but obviously she's everyone's like Nickelodeon crush, I guess. I mean, she was like the most famous kid at the time, the most famous kid in the world, arguably, I would say. Was
Well, you
Amanda
guys are
Bynes
from
for
a
minute.
different generation. My Nickelodeon crushes, I think, were Clarissa and Alex Mack.
Oh, I mean, they're still my crushes too. But I'm just thinking the next generation. You're right. Like Amanda Bynes was, and then you look at oh shoot, where'd it go? The new Amanda Bynes, I'm gonna call it, which is just it's she looks like so many people we know. You know what I mean? It just feels like this, like this is, you know, your candle. Jack's talking about that fire inside you, Rose, and you got to keep burning, Rose, and it's not burning as brightly. And she's hanging out with this Jesus handler, right? I mean, what Jesus handler? Anytime you have a Jesus handler, you know, like this guy's into Kundalini yoga.
Isn't he from Queer Eye from the Straight Guy?
I don't know. Is he? I don't know. Is that true or is that a joke?
I feel like he is.
I don't know. I think he's a student, and then they said he's a doctor, and he says he's a scientist and all these things. And it's like, oh gosh, I don't know if he's a scientist, but then again, he might be these days. I mean,
Maybe a handler.
That's what he's clearly a handler, right? That's what the vibe I get. Anyway, she's also, this is post, and the excuse being that she took so much crushed Adderall that her brain popped or something. But I mean, is that real? Is that what's going on? Because look at, this is not the same Amanda.
When you say crushed Adderall, you mean that she's snorting Adderall?
Yeah, that's what she said she did when she was a teenager.
It's
She
so
said she
weird
got a
because
fake,
you're going to get less of an effect, and it's going to cause more damage.
right.
I don't understand people that snort Adderall. Don't, if any of our listeners do that, don't do that, because you'll get a better effect just from fucking swallowing it.
But
also,
better yet, don't take
Honest
the
question
speed.
here: Are
If
we
you're gonna
saying
do it,
that?
do it
Are we
right.
saying that Amanda Bynes could do more damage to herself in the span of 10 years with Adderall than Keith Richards could do to himself in the span of like 50 years on everything?
It's a question, man. It's a question for sure. I don't know. I mean, Adderall's pretty bad and all that because it is.
Are you saying
15
Keith
kinds of
Richards
pure
never
stimulants.
snorted a few Adderalls?
This the whole thing is like, it feels
He probably
different.
has people around him that let him know that that's not the way to do it.
It feels like she's had her soul like out of its body.
You know why? I was actually told this by James Mazio, that the reason that the Rolling Stones, because I always thought that they got the blood transfusion thing to just longevity, like they want young people blood because it's like they regularly replace their blood, and so then because they did so much fucking heroin and all kinds of stuff, they always get fresh blood. And I thought that was just for longevity, like they're real life vampires. I think now at this point, that's probably why they do it. But initially, it was for drug tests because they literally tested their blood when they'd come to the U.S. to do a tour. So they would be like wanting to just keep up with their lifestyle as they had it, and they'd just get fresh blood, get that tested, and then continue on with their business. But like apparently that was why they at least initially did that. But yeah, I mean, I have like I have like a Playboy from like the late 90s or something where they're like making fun of like that Keith Richards and I'm sorry, I can't think right, the other main guy from the Rolling Stones,
Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger, that they're like, how are these guys still alive?
They're just
You
trying to
know,
keep
like,
up
and
with
it's
the
from
Jim
the late
Joneses.
90s. Them joking about it. They're alive right now. I mean, celebrity death pool. Come on, man.
I mean, the blood
Everyone's
thing is
into it.
interesting, blood platelets and everything, like looking at the celebrities, that is just becoming more and more normalized, and we're having more and more synthetic blood options and everything. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to last as a taboo. And so the only reason it's been a taboo is because people had to get hurt in the 19th century. Only rich people could do it in the 20th century. So as time goes on, you'll see that more and more. But there is something really weird when you look at just these child stars that seem drained. Like the Dark Crystal, you know? And it just, what is the excuse for this? Is this really, I mean, give me a reason. Is it drugs? Is it rape? Is it
Well, it's
more
also
than
just
that?
like a child star. If they're a real child star, they've had cameras and the amount of attention. Like for you to live in that paradigm for that long with you have no opportunity for grounding. And so that was one of the things that Michael Jackson was trying to let people know about why he was as weird as he was he was like, he was on the dating game at 8 years old. Like it's insane. Like the amount of his whole life is like documented so closely from such a young age. Like it trips you the fuck out. Like it's hard enough to just get
But are
by
people
as it
doing that to
is with
themselves
attention.
now? Now there's people that are not even famous doing
Exactly.
the like documenting everything.
Right. So that's that, and that also kind of ties in with there's some quote from who's the 1960s Velvet Underground painter guy.
Andy
I'm
Warhol.
so out of Andy Warhol. Gonna do that for a while. Sorry, guys. Andy Warhol.
Next time he does that, I want you to like let him grasp at a few random things about Andy Warhol. I'm really curious.
Sorry, guys.
Like,
I was
with the
drinking beer.
can and the
mean,
transsexuals and the sleeping movie. What were you gonna say? Sorry.
Oh my god.
No, yeah.
I'm like a stoner. What were we just talking about? Why did I bring up Andy Warhol? Jesus Christ.
Child stars, Andy
Oh
Warhol.
yeah, he said that there would be celebrity death every day in the future. Right. He was like, you're looking at the distance between celebrity deaths, and he was like, there's going to be so many goddamn celebrities that it's gonna be it's just gonna be constant. You're gonna be like, oh, who died today that you know in Celebrityville, and so I think we're living out kind of his prediction about celebridom, like that it's just it went from so exclusive to now just all over the place, and we have the internet to thank for that.
Yeah, 15 minutes of fame is a really terrifying thing that's happened. People are grasping for it, like, oh, I got my that one video I did is doing well. I mean, it's like this one video is famous for a minute or something. That's kind of weird. That's a weird vibe to have, just to be grasping at attention, right?
I was thinking about reaching out to Tazon Day not long ago just to see what the hell he was up to. Do anyone remember him? That was kind of like the epitome of the 15-minute of fame.
Chocolate Ray.
Right, and he had like the Pepsi commercial that played at like the Super Bowl and stuff, and then not a whole lot after that.
I like the Leave Britney Alone Kara Cunningham one. Leave Britney alone. That was dramatic. That was cool.
Was it real?
That was concerning. Like you're just like yeah. He's like, if anything happens, if any of you do anything to Britney, I'm going. Like they literally threatened suicide in that video. It's really intense.
Yeah, it's pretty similar though to like all the left when I mean, it just felt like it was a sign of things to come. Like,
well, that was back when YouTube was YouTube and men were men too.
Yeah, it's like, whoa, look at this guy, and everyone's like, that's not a guy. You have to literally learn to accept what this is, and that was the beginning for a lot of people.
And the video after that was like Saddam Hussein getting beheaded. Like it was a completely different YouTube.
Ooh. Yeah, you're talking about the time frame in which that video came out. There's also the girl who couldn't hug all the cats. There's like the fake eHarmony video. She was great. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where she's like doing an eHarmony thing, and she's like, "Well, I like this, and I like this, and I really like cats." And then she just starts going off about cats for like 5 minutes straight, and it's just there she is. Yeah.
I only remember like the auto tuned "I like cats." Like made a song out of it. That was really good. But yeah, be careful.
Let's keep rewinding the clock back just like one more tick too, because on a sync, but. It also reminds me of the like disclose things if it seems real, but it's not real. You guys remember bonsai kittens? And I remember so many people getting upset over this. And they used to publish like the most outrageous emails that would get sent to bonsai kittens. And the whole premise was that you would like buy a special jar. And if you raise the kitten inside a jar, it would like grow to be the shape of the jar. So you'd get like a square kitten. And it was obviously all fake. But like they were advertising it like, no, you can raise forever, and they've got like little straws and air systems, and people were like reporting this website to like the authorities constantly.
Oh my god, that's horrific.
No, cats love this. That's the sad truth about cats. You get them near a jar or a box, they're gonna try to do this themselves.
You know what? We were just talking about something connects to something else we were talking about, because fucking Britney Spears. So like Britney Spears has those videos that come out now, like her with the knives and whatever, and then and we know that was real because she gave an explanation, or we can guess.
It was a Shakira video, and she even used the same exact prop knife from the Shakira video. That's
right. So there's a bunch of those videos that came out. I think some of them are her in the first place, and some of them are just like total deepfake Britney videos. Like she's been a target of deep fake, like the people on TikTok, and so and sometimes you can see for a moment where the face disappears and another face is there. It's for like a single frame or whatever, and you're like, oh, what the fuck?
That's just
but,
Well, that's her
demons.
shifting in and out of reality. I
Yeah,
thought.
that's just the demons. Yeah.
oh, that's okay.
She's like,
But
it's
yeah,
like,
no,
have you
it's
seen John Malkovich?
because,
She's
well,
like, let me back. You know?
Well, I say it's because you're talking about child stars, you're talking about Nickelodeon. Like she was Mickey Mouse Club, right? So she was one of the Mickey Mouse Club girls, and then she grew up to be a pop star, and then shaved her head at one point. There was like men in black suits trying to keep her parents from entering her own house while her handlers were trying to talk her down from her thing. Like I saw that at the time. I remember it clearly. I haven't seen it since. I don't know if you guys have ever seen that footage where there's like the handlers keeping like trying to talk Britney down in the house and her parents screaming to let them in their own house and they won't let them pass. Have you seen this? You have seen this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I tried to look for it again and I couldn't find it again. And I was like, has this just been scrubbed or?
Yeah, I think it's hard to find, but I think you can if you were to really look for it. But it's
I
difficult.
love the John Malkovich Britney Spears theory because I think that there's something to like in a hyperbolic way, right? Like Hillary Clinton just snorts a line of, something that comes out of the adrenal gland, and all of a sudden Britney posts like a crazy dance video for 15 minutes, and then she like goes back into the closet until like John Podesta takes a line, and then all of a sudden, Britney's out there with knives and like cutting stuff. Like it's all just like a John Malkovich sort of.
Well, this is what they're
ceremony.
teaching kids now. Have you played Pal World, the new open world Pokemon game that has mind control meds? Here's how to get and use mind control meds. It's a really important part of the game if you're playing Pal World. Are you wondering how to use mind control meds in Pal World? This powerful drug is one that you get later on in the game and is used to control dissidents, quote unquote, in your base. Of course, it's not extremely easy to craft such a powerful item. If you're trying to craft medicines in Pal World, be sure to check how to care for your pals. You can also check how to get all the guns in Pal World. I find this interesting. They're giving kids guns and drugs in the most, ready to eat for everyone.
It's just like it's like the 30s all over again.
Yeah, this is great.
Here's your meth. Here's your rifle. Get the class.
Is this game from China?
I think it's from
Is
Japan.
American?
Right?
Yeah, or Japan. Excuse me.
Yeah, Pal World. Is it made in Japan or do they just market it? I don't really know.
If it says 10 cent, we're screwed.
Programmer is Hiroto Matsutani, which is not Jewish. I'm pretty sure he sounds Japanese to me. Gameplay, yeah. Development, independent company in Tokyo. Yeah, it's gonna be full on independent, open source, open world Pokemon with guns and drugs and guns. I mean, this is a good thing, but the problem is that, is it a problem? It's just kids now are going to know the way things work, right? We're finally telling them, and through Pokemon, like because you're the whole idea of the drug control thing. Like you have to like control dissidents, you have to learn how to craft them. These are Japanese kids. They get the metaphor. They have to take chemistry class.
And well, they also know how to capitalize on IP while it's relevant to the respective generations. I think that's one thing that's messed up about American IP and copyright. As much as I'm back and forth on this issue, but if you think about it, right, the ultimate game for us would be some kind of a universe where it's got Last Action Hero and Rambo and Terminator and just like every single one.
Right, but isn't that Ready Player One?
Well, it kind of is, but all those properties, they don't become public domain until everyone that cares about them is dead and gone off the planet. And now it's just like a bunch of like, oh yeah, I think my great grandpa cared about Demolition Man, as opposed to like letting us all enjoy it because that was put into our heads. Like we kind of own it. Like we own part of that IP because like we grew up with it and helped nurture it and manifest it. I don't know. It's because when I see that Pokemon, Japan, it's like I want that, but I don't care about the Pokemon version. I care about my childhood version. But no one's ever going to work together to do that.
Well, hold on. But yeah, first off, Japan is better. You're right, because the idea that regardless, after 50 years, it's freaking public.
Yep.
So that's a big deal. If you're 55 and like, when you're 5 years old, you watched a cartoon, everything that's like retirement age. They're retiring the copyright of the thing. And then people are moving on by that point to new art anyway. But you look at like the modding game community and what's going on. I think we're about to hit a point where game is going to be like with people making a game engine that you can put things into the game engine. It's going to answer all of that because people hate pay to play. People hate all these freemium purchases of costumes and things like that. And there's no reason for it. It's so easy for you to upload your own character which could be any file. It could be a file you bought or made. So someone could go on Fiverr and design your favorite 1970s superhero, in for your game. So we're about to get to that point. I think it's not going to be very long before you'll be able to play with whatever you want to play with. The problem is they're going to be upset about it because they're trying to control, the American industry of trying to control trademarks isn't working. And I think they already know that, though. They're like, well, we're not very good at making the Star Wars movies. We're not really good at making any of this stuff. People don't really want to buy them. If we allow them to use those figurines at a cost, people will make up their own stories. And so games are probably going to emerge. I think Disney sees that as well, that they're not going to be able to continue to control the story narrative forever. But if you make a world, then people can interact in that world, and anything can happen.
Yeah. It's one of the worst things that has happened culturally in our lifetime, actually, is with sampling, both visual and audio. Like, if they would have just let us play, it would have actually helped even the producers of the material. Like, if you just let open the floodgates on that, it would have culturally, because it was already kind of starting, and they pull the plug. It's like damming up something that was really trying to come out. And I think it's just this idea of, like, because we know it's true for knowledge, right? And this will piss people off again. I'm sorry, but this is my issue with people want to have other issues with Einstein. It's fine. But as far as this one accusation of plagiarism, it annoys me, because I'm just like, dude, everyone builds off of what was before. Like, I personally don't look at the Romans like they were copying the Greeks. Like, they're literally grafting their thing onto what existed and just building off of it. And it was like this enormous tapestry of creativity or imagination. And so, like, my feeling is, like, with people produce music, if we just, like, what sampling allows you to do, if we just let it all go, like what we've been able to do with the restrictions is so impressive. Can you imagine what that would be if we never would have put restrictions on that? It'd just be fucking incredible. So, like, as a collage artist, I feel this is close to my heart, both with, like, film and music, and just straight, like when I do a collage, like just a piece, like, I like to, like, think of it like this is all these different artists, like, conglomerating without their knowledge, like they're all building something together, kind of, and I'm kind of just like, a facilitator of a thing that gets to kind of make itself almost, so I get this whole creative thrill out of being able to do that. And when I first started using Photoshop, I was like, am I really allowed to do this? Like, it was like I felt like Jeff Daniels in Pleasantville. I was like, is this okay? Like, am I cool? Like, this, because what it's capable of is so extraordinary.
I feel like there's a strong correlation there with AI, and I actually had a conversation with Shane Cashman either last week or this week, and I thought I had like a bulletproof stance on this, and maybe it's not as strong as it could be, and either one of you guys could steel man it or break it down. But the exact analogy is the same thing: is how is AI not similar to 1990s hip hop sampling, like Biz Markie taking that 3 second or like 0.3 second sound of a trumpet or something? How is that much different than sampling all the artists that have been sampled?
What interests me more with the AI thing isn't just when you put in the words into the thing and it makes the production. It's what you could do with it on top of that. So, like, the amount of further, like, interplay, like, there's so much potential there. It's ridiculous. And who's doing cool stuff with AI is fucking the new VP pick for RFK. So, like, that woman is like, has used AI to, like, I can't do it justice from the bit that I've been scouring the internet today to try and find out what I can, because I watched this woman's speech her acceptance speech. I like her. I see a lot of people just straight away talking shit. But
cool, actually, I liked what
she's all right. And it's also this thing of, like, it makes sense because he's a Democrat who's like, my party has been corrupted. And he's coming up against that. He's like, they're trying to keep him off the ballots, even though he's a traditional Democrat with traditional Democratic values. So why not have a VP that's in the same position where she's like, you guys are fucking failing me for every ideal that I attribute to the Democratic Party. So fuck you guys. And like, I think that's cool as hell, man. I mean, people are going to talk shit no matter what, I guess, because it's what people do. And you know, some of the criticisms are valid, but at the
She's
same
super
time,
local, and like I
yeah.
don't know. I feel like she's been on the inside. You know, she's seen what happened with Google, and she knows the agenda of Google, like from actually working on the inside with Sergey Brin. So she's probably the most powerful. I mean, it's really an interesting choice, and I mean, never took RFK as a candidate too seriously. I take him far more seriously now because this is such a compelling uh, candidate at that point.
Well, as far as his campaign promises have been, how was he to implement them? She can help do that. It kind of reminds me of who Elon Musk picked to help him with the with X was the lady from Peacock. It's like you get somebody that's like you're like you can accomplish this, help me accomplish this vision that I have. And when you look at the explanation of how they plan to go about doing what they plan to go about doing, it's like it's pretty sound. Like, you know, like I think a lot of people who are just having this knee jerk to RFK need to fucking look at the shit that he's actually been saying and doing. Like, it's incredible. And like his whole history as an environmentalist, it's like, you know, the Democratic Party is just completely fucking far gone. And he has this whole thing with fucking Hunter S. Thompson. Nobody talks about this. Hunter S. Thompson taught RFK the third how to shoot a gun at Woody Creek. People are concerned that he's going to take away their guns. It's like, dude, he was close friends with Hunter S. Thompson, and RFK the third produced Fear and Loathing in Aspen with Cheryl Hines, and it's a great movie. It's not the same thing as Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, but it's a pretty good movie.
Mythic last time about how microtransaction-based content is destroying games. It's such a true thing. I mean, you see, games are already kind of lame in the last few years already, but people hate working for these big gaming companies, and you can tell. They're like, oh man, now I have to go to work and make a casino like grind that you have to buy stuff. Nobody making these games is happy, and it's sad.
I'm surprised that there's not more like ESG issues with the gaming thing like there is with comic books.
Stefan, by the way, yes, people keep liking and subscribing to my videos and sharing them. We're growing fast, and that's awesome.
Environmental, social governance connected to DEI, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion. So basically, you have these ESG scores are going to serve as life rafts for big companies should the economy, you know, collapse or something in between. Right. You know, like basically they're going to get bailed out from banks because they've complied. It's a compliance thing. And so, and some of it is just like arbitrary shit. It's just like, are you going to do what you're told? So it's just kind of trying to engineer a world where in order to survive as companies, going to destroy small businesses. And so it's all tied together. And so I find it interesting because that has apparently affected like comic books and things. Like it's affected so much in media and etc. But like a lot of people who are really avid comic book readers are like, what's happening to our fucking comic books? Like, this is not a good story anymore. They're like, they used to be interested in the story, and they're like, we're losing touch with that. And it's not just like the problems that people have with Disney per se, with like Kathleen Kennedy doing like, you know, the ultra woke thing. It goes beyond that.
It's not going to matter much in like 4 years or so, because like now with the Blackwell or whatever it is, like the
Blackwell?
Nvidia's new $40,000 GPU chip that will be able to do. We've been talking about this for a couple of years or a year now. Mm-hmm. AI generated movies that you can just watch, but really AI generated games that you can play. And have you heard of Dwarf Fortress? Do you know what that game is? Dwarf Fortress is one of the most autistic creations since Templos, and it's really incredible. Actually, you can't tell by looking at it. And that's kind of the point. They're like, well, let's not worry about the graphics. In fact, let's just use ASCII. And you can mod it to use images to replace the ASCII symbols. But basically what it does is it generates really complicated fortresses, worlds, actually, that are, I mean, even though this looks low res, this world to generate, it's a dwarf fortress, so it has topography like Minecraft. It goes down to the center of the earth. There's layers to it. This is a continent that's the size of Europe, you know what I mean? And you can go in, so it takes a really powerful computer to generate your dwarf fortress, and then you run through it and you create the history. And the way they build it is the autistic brother will write a bunch of these dwarf stories, and then they'll analyze the stories and figure out what were the mechanisms like these characters had that made it possible for them to do that. You know, like they can stockpile. They have a military that organizes in squadrons. They're able to look and find things. There are cats in this world, things like that. And then it makes it possible to generate new stories, and they compare it to see if it's the story that's generated is similar, at least enough. Like, so then all of a sudden you've added those capacities to that world, and then millions of stories can be generated using those capacities. One of the weirdest things that happened was they set it up that cats exist in this world. Cats will lick their own paws. Cats will consume whatever they lick off their bodies. And dwarves drink. Dwarves will break cups. Dwarves will spill beer on the floor. So cats ended up getting into the bars, drinking beer off puddles on the floor, getting alcohol poisoning, and dying. And these are things that they didn't expect to happen, but just because they made these things possible, then those formulas start to emerge, and cats start getting drunk and dying of alcohol poisoning, right?
Wow.
I think
Is
that's
a game that appeals to people who actually know coding? Is it like complex like that, or what is it? Like,
yeah,
that
but I think
kind of game
it's gonna get more and more simple. It's like the idea of an RPG where you can build up a world. You can have what are they called? Dwarves that mine for material. You can make a history or something like that. People like those kinds of games, and the fact that it doesn't look like anything, you can make it look like whatever you want it to. But more importantly, those ideas of game mechanics, it's a focus on game mechanics. I think game mechanics are going to replace storytelling in a lot of ways, because just the capacity to do something left in a formula means that those things could happen and emerge in the future. So you're constantly giving people the potential to pick up a sword or to pick up a bow or to pick up a book, right? And I think that's going to, as time goes on, more and more, we've done a lot of work to design and program games that are boring in the last 5 years, but those game mechanics still matter. And I think those will emerge. Like, very soon you'll be like, I want to play a game about something. AI will generate it using all the information it knows about the Unreal Engine or whatever, and you'll be able to play whatever story you're interested in. And that's probably 3 or 4 years away at the most, right?
Have you ever heard of NetHack, Andreas?
Oh, what's NetHack?
So NetHack is a game that a bunch of nerds in the military, when I joined, were all playing, and it was identical. In my mind, it was almost identical to Dwarf Fortress. And it was basically kind of what David was implying too, though. Like, a lot of people that did this knew programming, and there was almost like an aspect of programming and playing at the same time.
Yeah, this actually looks familiar. I think I might have played this, because now I'm looking at the BIOS version of it, or the next version of it. This looks like a familiar. So basically, you have to.
So this is just a different rendering. Like the actual NetHack is exactly what you were showing with the Dwarf Fortress, where it's all just ASCII. Whereas people in Windows 3.1 made like a nice looking. That's what I think that is. That's Windows 3.1 right there.
And here's a NetHack that's got like a map, yeah. So they can do this to any game. You can make any game look however you want it to look, if the mechanics are there, right? So you could replace this with an open world PS5, make it look all fancy, but it doesn't need to be, because the more important thing is the game mechanics.
This was like one of the first games that I ever worked on too. There was a game called Castle of the Winds from like the early 90s, and I think it was just on Windows. But man, this game was like, in fact, and I remember decompiling this thing in like C++ and breaking it apart and turning the guy into like a pimp, and I put like some 70s like funk music in the background. And but this essentially is the same as NetHack and Dwarf Fortress, just slightly higher quality graphics, but it's the exact same premise and underlying code.
Yeah, see, I feel like this is cool. The idea that you can build up mechanics and behavior trees. Did we already talk about what Rockstar Games' new patent is? Rockstar Games, who make Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead Redemption, they just made this like crazy new patent, which I don't think it's legally enforceable. I think this is going to be one of those things that companies won't want to get into litigation over unless it's worth it, but it's worth it. This idea that you can build sort of behavior trees. And so if you generate a character, that character can grab on already existing behaviors, like a child branch. So this new character might be a dude in the street. Well, he's in the street, so street bums are in the street. It might inherit street bum characteristics. They have these. Street bums are men, so they walk like men. Some of them walk like poor men or like crippled men or things like that. So now you can just grab a bunch of assets randomly, and it'll just generate a character, and it'll be hyper realistic. So as you're walking through GTA 6, it'll be filled with not just an open world, but living world of characters that, again, they have to poop, they have to work, they have to, they steal, they have apartments. I think that's going to be interesting.
Did you play Black and White?
Black,
the game?
I don't remember that.
That game was
The
great.
guy's name that made it. He was a little bit of a weirdo.
Oh
yeah. So you have
in a
like
good way, good weirdo.
Yeah. So your creature that you make, like you could.
Calf?
Well, you could abuse your creature. You could treat it well. You could do whatever you wanted, and then your creature would kind of like respond. Like it would become more traumatized and act out, or it would be like super awesome. It's basically like a god for these people, these civilizations. It's really a weird game.
But someone did something to this, right? Someone spun this. They raised a character to be like the Messiah, or they didn't torture it. Something weird happened.
Yeah,
right?
you could go in either direction. That's why it's called Black and White. But yeah, so I liked it because it was kind of like you could see the consequences of the treatment of not just you, but also all the people who live in the environment. Because you're all giant and they're all small, villagers and stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, the idea that we're on one hand closing down options in storytelling, but building up options in game mechanics, because you're not allowed to see things in movies anymore happen, but simultaneously people are kind of out of the gaming world. The people that are part of the game world are younger, so I think censorship works slightly differently, and there's already a push against, like, the Sweet Baby, against censorship, against woke gaming. I don't think it's gonna be the same as the media, like the movie industry. The movie industry is already, not enough people watch movies, and so they're just using it as a propaganda machine for their more valuable industry.
Yeah, a lot of people are. A lot of things are happening in film, and the thing is that film is a spectator thing, unless you're watching Bandersnatch. But even so, you only have so many other possibilities, right? So we don't have quite a choose your own adventure in any real sense for like a film. So it lacks that interaction. That's why Joe Rogan has so many more views than Tucker Carlson had on Fox, is because fucking television is on its way out. And people, what is the appeal of the internet is that people can interact. If some journalist says something and I'm watching the news, I can sit there, I could throw things at the TV or whatever. I can't. It's nothing. It's just me on my own watching this person. Whereas if I'm on Twitter, I can actually like make a comment and possibly get a response from that journalist. Like it's light years ahead. It's what helped get Trump elected, was his use of Twitter in that way.
I remember when CNN tried to flip that, and it was like donate your footage to us and we'll air it and we'll give you credit, like on the bottom, and like no one ever really gave him anything that substantial, because everyone's like, yeah, that's cute, but like, shouldn't I be getting like 30 grand for this clip? It's kind of turned the other way around, where now it's like we might want to interact with them, but it's almost on our terms. Like they need to be chasing after us.
Right. We also have like the public court, where it's like we're trying people in public. And what's weird is, like, if you look at like law, how law is supposed to work, like justice is blind, right? Why is justice blind? It has to do with identity. It's that they put your identity aside and just focus on what you did. And so it's supposed to be whatever, level of society you are. This is the ideal. I'm not saying they actually do this, but like the ideal of the justice system is supposed to be that they don't have that prejudice. But when you look at what's happening with like the social governance, it's like, which relates to ESG, is that people will start with people's identities. That'll be their focus, and they're making judgments upon what people did based on their perception of their identity. And you don't always know a person unless you really know them. Like, I don't know people unless if I've actually personally seen them over time, like in person, to really get a sense of somebody's character.
And even then, Ted Bundy again, John Wayne Gacy.
Right. My dad was friends with Kemper. It's like, you don't always know somebody, but he didn't know him, that well, but if you know somebody, you get to a point with somebody where you're like, okay, I get an idea, but then you still don't. I've had people surprise the shit out of me with where they really stand when it comes down to it, even if I've known them for years. So when we're doing that with celebrities and stuff, and we're summing somebody's character like that, we're starting with our perception of their identity. You know, I mean, it's understandable that we would do that, but I'm just saying it's also problematic and very far removed from the
Yeah,
ideal of justice. You know?
but also like justice is blind to me has always been like a platonic solid. Like that doesn't exist in the real world. It never will. It might even just be a complete theoretical concept, like a fabrication of us grasping with the world that's just cruel.
Right. Well, it depends on the integrity of a judge, doesn't it? And a jury and everyone else involved in a case, and how the lawyers are going to be like, you know, like it could be like Injustice for All with Al Pacino, where he just loses his shit at the end. And he's like, I'm out of order. You're out of order. This whole court is out of order. You know,
You
like,
know, it'd be nuts if there was almost like a judge rating system where you could like vote for the judge that you wanted for your case, and that there might also be like a built-in meritocracy in that, because you wouldn't necessarily want a judge that just always votes everyone guilty if you're the criminal, you know, and vice versa.
oh, right.
But like you might want the one that for sure seems to be the most neutral and might give you the best chance. And that could also weed out like, oh, if all the criminals keep voting this judge high and the prosecution votes it low, that kind of pushes those off to the side, where eventually you get an equilibrium of like neutral judges.
There was
Right.
a judge in Australia in the 19th century who had been a convict, and then they said, okay, you know the most about the treatment of the convicts and who's guilty and who's not, and you've lived like more than half of your life in a jail. I'm gonna make you the judge, and he turned out to be like the most honorable judge. Like he's historically famous as
Right.
being a really decent judge.
Ooh,
That's-
Well, we're
that's
all
sorry.
criminals in this room, you know.
I'm sorry to do this, but that relates to RFK's VP pick.
Oh god.
Because she's up in it. So you're like, dude, who better? And especially with the AI stuff, she's like, she can see how AI could become a problem in the future. How to not just curtail
Maybe.
that, but
There's a
but
difference,
to use
though.
it in the right ways, doing the what you know, yeah.
Well, there's a little tinge of that, of like an appeal to authority that is lacking in the Australian example, because the Australian example is almost like the philosopher king, where the best society theoretically is where like I'll simplify it, like 5 dudes get in a room, and at the end of this meeting, randomly someone's going to be assigned to be the king, someone's going to be assigned to be the beggar, and no one knows who it is. So while they're in that room, they have to decide what the rules of society are, so that everyone's kind of working in their best interests. And like, what if I end up being the beggar, but also like, what if I end up being the king? And that kind of is
That's
that
interesting. I
example
like
of like
that.
someone that's been the
Right.
person on the
I'm
street.
gonna put my Mason hat back on. Just 'cause
Do you
said that.
do
That's a
you
good
know it's connected to Justice is Blind? There's the legal saying of sleeping under the same bridge. So if you look this up, there's a Wikipedia page. I was just looking at this. So like, so it's a saying that they have that has. I need to get the actual thing. So Andreas, can you help me out? Can you look up sleeping under the same bridge as a legal saying? It's connected to Justice is Blind. Like if you look up Justice is Blind, it'll sleep under the same bridge. So so here, if you look at the etymology here, it says an allusion to quote, the law in its majestic equality forbids the rich as well as the poor to sleep under the bridge, to beg in the streets, and to steal bread. So the thing is it's fucked up, because you're like, okay, they're saying that if you're rich or poor, neither of you can sleep under the bridge. So it's like, but how does this deal with people just being in a, you know, because I think that the ideal is that people are kind of under their own life choices have brought them to wherever they land, which used to be much, much truer in the past. Like I can think back to the 80s, that usually when I saw homeless people in Santa Cruz, it was like, that was their life choices. You know, and it may have been an addiction, or it may have literally, like, I know a guy named Bubba who literally, like, he was in Vietnam. He had traveled all over the world. He left his wife, his kids were grown. He just decided he wanted to be homeless, and he lived out in the woods, and he was one of the happiest people I've met. And, you know, and I was like, oh, you know, that's the thing. And he chose that for himself. And at that time, he could actually get by that way a little easier than you can today, because if you try to sleep out in those same woods that he was at in Nicene Marks in Santa Cruz, you probably not, you know, it's not going to be as allowed. They'll let you be in a shelter or whatever, you know. But yeah, anyway, I don't know. I think that there's something to be said for the irony of that statement of sleeping under the same bridge, because it's like that may have been more applicable in the past. I don't know how applicable that is now, because somebody could not have fire insurance and their fucking house burns down, and they're just like they were living okay before that, and now they're out of the suitcase.
Down. Baltimore Bridge, London Bridge, you know, you get this. It's a bridge sink. It's pretty good. What about Neuralink? Almost the last. Told its human patient not to worry about the gruesome monkey deaths, and he didn't because now he's. But like he did ask about the reports of botched brain surgeries on monkeys, and they just said don't ask about the brain surgeries on monkeys. But
Well, just for clarification, did the AI unprompted start like telling this dude about monkey deaths?
No, it's not AI. That's the thing. Neuralink is just your ability to control the machine. It's like a mouse. So he's using it to play Mario Kart racing and chess and video games and things. He's controlling the computer screen, and that's a very big deal. But it's
I swear I saw this on a documentary in like the early 2000s.
That's the thing. It's nothing new. And then so Neuralink's hack job, quote unquote, brain chip trial aren't fit for humans. Congressman says to the FDA, what do you think is going to happen? Because we keep watching this kind of push and go with Neuralink, and then they'll point something out like, here we have a really popular, successful product, and it's just, again, something that we saw, like you said, 20, 30 years ago. But yeah, you can control.
This is mainly for Mario Kart, right? So you can play Mario Kart with your brain.
He's saying like the human brain has its limits, and so really the goal would be to be able to push that mind right out of the brain through the USB port.
Do you think any of this would disqualify someone from professional sports or anything else in the world? Like right now they're using Neuralink as like, oh, this poor guy, he used to be able to see, he can't see, or they're paralyzed. Like they're targeting a very sympathetic group of people. But if this were all just like the ultimate Chad rich assholes, now all of a sudden have Neuralink and they've all got like an instant Wikipedia access where they don't have to bring their phone out. Like, I don't know, it feels like people might start discriminating. It's like, well, wait a minute, like you're not allowed to play chess. You've got a Neuralink. Like you can only play Neuralink.
I can't wait for like Down syndrome people to be better at everything. And I think that's that's the plan. Like we're gonna pick the people that everyone said, oh well, like they're not doing as well as everyone else, and we're gonna give them a better life, not just better than they have, better than anyone else has.
Oh, this is like a Kurt Vonnegut short story, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like Lawnmower Man. But if you do that to everybody, then all of a sudden you have a new class. And when everyone looks at people with Down syndrome, they say, oh, help. There's a guy with Down syndrome. He can help me. That's going to be the new...
Isn't it just kind of like the ultimate extension of what Jim Morrison populated with the Lord's Notes on Vision? I don't know if you guys have ever read that poem, but it's like my favorite poem I've ever read, probably by anybody. Where he basically, there's a lot of aspects to it, but one of them is that he's talking about like the elite ambitions are kind of like connected to like, if you could, they're like yoga powers. So he's like, if you could see in all rooms at once, if you could like, look from a vantage points like satellites or whatever. So this is kind of this acknowledgement that the goals of the elite are like a replication of the goals of the yogis, like cities, like you develop these powers. And so if you're looking at the Neuralink stuff, like as you're describing it, Thomas, that could be like an extreme, implementing of like what are essentially cities for people. You have people going around with superpowers, because we already kind of have that already, and it's increasing. But there's this idea of like, let's steal the eye that sees us all, like you said, Wikipedia. Like if you had Wikipedia in your head, who the fuck is editing what's in your head now? Like, because at least in your own head as it exists, you're kind of like that filing cabinet, like you put that shit there, you know what I mean? Like, you still have the influences, but you still have some relative control over, your own thought, if you have somebody else, like that's real, like talk about scary mind control shit. Like what the Neuralink could be capable of is up there, like kind of like extreme dystopian tip, and that smile on Elon Musk's face. It seems cute, but it could be really sinister.
I think it's funny that he spent so much time saying AI is so dangerous, so we need to make Neuralink. Because it's like, okay, well, then humans are going to become the thing that you're afraid of, or they're going to disappear in the process. But isn't that your fear with robots, is that they'll replace us? So I don't know. I'm not sure if he really, he hasn't articulated as well as he'd like to make us think he has, his actual fears about AI and what it is he wants in the future. This idea of super intelligence that's emerging isn't necessarily... clear. And if it's made by,
He alleviated my fears, you know. He's a little bit better than Bill Gates, but he hasn't alleviated my concerns.
I mean,
Yeah.
I've got so many questions for a Neuralink. What happens if you have a Neuralink and take ecstasy? What happens if that same person on ecstasy with the Neuralink gets tased because they're being non-compliant?
What if you're
What
playing
happened? Like,
Pal
there's so many.
World and all of a sudden you feel the mind control drugs you crafted? You know, that's the thing that's gonna happen. I think the bigger one, because there are gonna be more and more that you'll be able to turn on feelings all the time. So you're watching a commercial about McDonald's and you feel like you're on ecstasy. You're like, what happened? I think that's coming.
I feel like that would just be the DLC though. Like you'd have to pay like 15 credits to feel that for a little bit.
Dude, what was that? I'm sorry to just talk about movies all the time, but I'm you know, media saturated. I'm just like, what was that movie where they had the drug thing that they put on them? Was it on their neck or something? And it was like this little box, and then it would inject the drug, and then they were like testing them in like some kind of like focus group type thing. And
I
it's
feel like
an
Johnny
island.
Mnemonic had some traces of
Existence.
that.
I mean,
No, it's recent. It's a recent, I mean, relatively recent. I think it was like from 2019 or something, maybe later even. Whatever. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a really creepy
movie. You'll find that
yeah,
movie.
it's related to what we're talking about, kind of.
Is it one that makes them
like a
piss
thing
or
that
makes them fight?
yeah, it could like turn them on, and then they like get people who would never have relations,
Yeah.
like,
I know
super
exactly what you're talking
attracted to
about.
each other, or like, yeah.
I want that movie. Love Potion number 9. If you guys go to paranoidamerican.com, you can check out the new Chosen One and Illuminati, which seems to be doing very well, but also Chosen One.
Yeah, dude, the Illuminati doesn't even need promotion. Like it just sells itself, I guess. The whole sex sells thing. The big one is the at chosenone.com, because that's going on right now. You can actually back it at this exact moment and get some exclusives. There's even some early bird specials where you can get like 10 or 20 bucks off some of them, but this is going to be the only time that you'll ever be able to get a foil cover of Chosen One, and in particular the Alex Stein foil cover, which I don't know if Alex is allowed to promote it because technically Blaze now owns his entire likeness and personality, but behind the scenes he loves this. He's on board. He's been on board on this freaking comic.
Actually, this is Al Eckstein, if you read it
this
right.
is Al Eckstein. And I mean, a nice little sync here, but this little clip that I've got as a preview is based on the absolute best scene of Beetlejuice when they ask him if he can be scary, and he opens up his coat, and you don't see what he's doing to be scary, but you know that it's like freaking them out. And that was what inspired that little scene with Alex Stein there. But we got homunculus growing kits, all kinds of fun stuff on this thing.
Dude. And yeah. Oh, there's other projects. Oh, that's not yours. Okay, I was like, wait, what? Okay, but yeah, you can get yourself a full set with the combo pack, 4 printed copies. You can split them with your friends. That's a pretty good deal. I say get up in there and do that. Also, you can get yourself a singles. Yeah.
Does Juan have his own podcast?
Yeah.
Do you have the?
He does.
Juan on I've been watching these little clips of him on Twitter, and I want to debate him.
Yeah,
I agree with most of what he says, but every so often I'm like, I want to.
What I like to do is I like to be on a show with one and somebody else, and then have one be like, "But isn't that dirty?" And then because he gets really, but then he'll be okay. I love Juan. Juan's one of the greatest, but he's a little shy. No, I'm just kidding. No, we'll get Juan on Synctank. Maybe next week he'll be free. I don't know. The next couple of weeks we'll set that up. And then I almost forgot, but I won't. Hold on. MK Ultrasound 723 David Charles Plate on Twitter, which if you go from the X, you can go to the sync book right here, and you can get his film synchronicity works all in a row, but he's also got in the highlights here, which is pretty sweet. He's got Deadpool, got Rainbow Thief, he's got Wicker Man. Ooh, I love the Wicker Man one. That one's always fun. The bad.
Yeah, this is actually not the Wicker Man one. This is the Wicker Tree one, which is the same guy who did Wicker Man did a sequel to the Wicker Man called the Wicker Tree, and I play it with a Nick Cave album called the Skeleton Tree. Came out around the same time, but yeah, it's trippy, and it's like a Christian pop singer who goes to the same place from the original Wicker Man, and so it's got a weird. It's funny. It's a comedy. I don't know if it's supposed to be a comedy, but it sure as shit is as far as I'm concerned. That's awesome. Yeah, from the website, you guys can download any of those movies. So if you have buffering issues or whatever, that's really the way to go. But they're also for streaming on Twitter as well. My Twitter thing is mostly to advertise for the website, because when I share links to the website, I don't think people will give it a chance as much as if it's just like instantly streaming on Twitter. But yeah.
Yeah, well, these are amazing. So make sure you guys go check out David Plate's A Tale of Love, Darkness with Lindsay Sterling, right? What's this?
Yep.
Lindsay Sterling's Brave Enough. This one's also pretty hardcore and industrial. I like this.
Yeah, this is Natalie Portman's movie. It's like she was born in Jerusalem, you know, so like this is about Amos Oz and his whole story. And so it's like takes place, you get to see where you know, Israel actually, you know, in 1947, 48, where it actually, you know, became a country, so a state.
Yeah,
So
it's an amazing movie, and actually, yeah, incredibly important historical film. I'd say everyone should watch this movie. I will check out The Sync with Brad Sterling. That sounds cool.
Cool.
Epic, and everybody go to tartarynova.com. That's where you can find more of our work. Go to the Discord, join the Discord at tartarynova.com, and thank you for subscribing, because it's cool that we got to 30,000 subscribers. I'm pretty into that. And tell your friends, and make sure you keep subscribing, because, yeah. All right. Love you guys. Peace.
Hello. Welcome to the Xirtus.